This right here is just a lovely little whiskey. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and this lovely little whiskey is the Celtic Whiskey Shop exclusive from Dunville's Irish whiskey. So let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now, first off, who are Dunvilles? Dunvilles is a brand here in Ireland, but it's not actually a distillery. It's kind of an old brand here in Ireland, but it's basically what's being released by the Echlinville Distillery up in Northern Ireland. So the Echlinville Distillery, they are making whiskey, but until their whiskey is like properly old enough, properly mature enough for it to be sold at a wide level, they are releasing whiskies that they source under the Dunville's brand. Now, they don't really tell you where they're sourcing whiskies from. Some of it is from GND, some of it's from Cooley, some of it might be from Bushmills, because they've got a good lab. You know, we've got like whiskies that are 21 years old, 24 years old in that kind of Dunville's brand. So they might be sourcing from a few different places, but I think this one here is coming from GND because it is a blend of 3 different Irish whiskies. Those whiskies are grain, malt, and pot still. So pot still is the style of whiskey unique to Ireland. You can only make it in Ireland. It's made of malted and unmalted barley. Malt whiskey is made from malted barley, and grain whiskey is almost always made mostly from corn, like 95% corn, maybe with like 5% malted barley in there to get the enzymes going, to actually get the kind of maturation, the brewing, that kind of process, the fermentation started in the whiskey. So it is going to be a lot of sweetness in here, because I'd say this is heavy on the corn, with the corn whiskey, with the with that grain whiskey, with some malt and pot still added in to give it a bit of roundness, to give it a spice, and to give it a bit of extra flavour. Now, this here, like I said, was released especially by the Celtic Whiskey Shop. You can kind of see that there, the kind of nice little artwork. I'll put a picture of the outside of the Celtic Whiskey Shop there so you can see that it does actually look like that. And it's like, I don't want to say like a mecca of whiskey, but it's one of those places in Dublin that if you want to go find good whiskies, go to the Celtic Whiskey Shop. They will have pretty much every Irish whiskey that's for sale on their shelves, and they'll also have some exclusives like this, because this here was only available from the Celtic Whiskey Shop. So it is basically just a barrel pick from them. It is coming in at 46% ABV, and it was aged in bourbon casks before being finished in rye casks from Manhattan. So you might say to yourself, that doesn't really sound all that exciting. I mean, it's a blended whiskey. Yeah, there's 3 parts there. Yes, it's not just grain and malt or grain and pot still. It has the 3 different styles in there. And it's bourbon and rye. What makes it great? Well, Celtic Whiskey Shop, they do know their stuff, and this actually is a really nice little whiskey. So I think the combination of bourbon and rye, I think depending on the whiskey, can add a nice bit of flavour, because the rye, it doesn't take the whiskey in a different direction. Like if you're starting off with good grain, good malt, good pot still, you put it in a bourbon cask, it gets nice and sweet. The rye, it doesn't take it in a very different direction, it just adds a few extra kind of notes, because it will be American oak, so you're still going to get those vanilla, kind of caramel, almost like peanut brittly notes you get from the American oak, with a bit of rye spice, with that kind of menthol, eucalyptus, black tea kind of notes from the rye, giving a bit of extra flavour to the whiskey. And that's, I think, all there is to say about it. Like I said, it's not a very complicated whiskey, but it is a lovely little whiskey. So I'm going to go in for the nose on this. Dunville's Rye Cask finish. Cheers. Oh yeah. Really nice. Really sweet. Like, really like apples and pears, and really like fruity up on the nose, with like there's like creamy, buttery kind of like vanilla, like buttercream frosting, that kind of like really sweet, but there's like a little bit of like spice behind it as well. Like there's like a bit of like herbal spice. I wouldn't say it's very like oaky spice. It's not like oak forward. It's a bit biscuity, but not really like heavy malt, you know, where you get that big, thick, biscuity, almost like dusty, musty malt. It's just like a bit of like cooked grains, toasted grains, that cooked biscuity kind of note you get from some malt. I'm not really getting a huge amount of like peppery pot still spice, like at least on the nose. Now it is coming in at 46%. Only a small portion of it is going to be pot still, but typically I would be expecting to get more like that black pepper, white pepper, pot still spice, at least on the nose. But it's not really here. It's just like a nice, light little approach. Like I said, there is a bit of herbal spice there. Again, it's like that almost eucalyptus, star anise, that kind of like quite herbal spicy note, at least on the nose. So I'm going to go in again, but this time I'm going to focus on the palate. Let's launch it. Definitely spicier on the palate than it is on the nose. Like the nose is soft approach, fruits. On the palate, much spicier, getting that kind of like cracked black pepper note that you'd expect from a pot still that you don't really get on the nose. Like there's still fruit, there's still sweet notes there, they're still getting that like, you know, apples and pears, still getting like a kind of a caramel note, like the cooked grain note from the nose, that's still there, but just with a fair bit more spice, at least on the palate there. Bit of tingly, like there's not really any, you know, burn to it. It's 46%. That's not really high, it's just a nice drinkable percentage. Gives a bit of spice. The mouthfeel isn't very heavy, like it has, I'd say, a medium mouthfeel. It's not like it's not mouth coating, but at the same time it's not like water, like it does linger a little bit. But I'm gonna go in again for a second time, focus on like those spicy notes, see if I can find more of that Rye Cask influence. Cheers. Second sip around, I let it linger there. I'm getting that rye, but instead of it being like that eucalyptus, that kind of note, it's almost more like black tea, almost bitter, not quite bitter, but almost into that bitter note where you get that black tea. There's like the tannins, almost that feeling there with that spicy note, with that kind of rye herbal character coming through in it. Still got that black pepper, still got that sweet note, almost more like brown sugar than caramel, not really toffee, that kind of like brown sugar, nice when you melt or you make like a brown sugar syrup, that kind of like sweet, deep, rich flavour there on the palate. So going to go in for a final sip, focus on the finish. Cheers. Okay, so on the finish, take a breath. It fades pretty quickly. Like I said, the mouthfeel is maybe medium. The finish is, I'd say, short to medium, like it's medium short. There's a little bit of that tingly, peppery, black pepper spice on my tongue, but it's not really like lasting a huge amount of time. It's just got a nice little kind of rye, herbal, black pepper, black tea, that kind of actually, after a breath, actually is a little bit menthol. Not really like fully minty, but like a little bit of menthol, like that herbal mint kind of character, rather than like the flavor of mint, like that actually, like the mint oil, menthol. Taking a breath, it's almost like cooling. Yeah, there's a little bit of that kind of note. I wouldn't say it's really heavy. I'd still say it's more like that black pepper, black tea, that kind of note with that little bit of herbal menthol-y kind of note coming in at the end as you take a breath. Before I give my final thoughts on the whiskey though, if you're new here, scroll down, hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button. I put out whiskey reviews like this every Wednesday. I put out cocktail recipes featuring whiskey every Friday, and I will have a cocktail recipe featuring this whiskey this Friday. So if you want to see more like that, make sure you're subscribed and leave me a note in the comments below if there's a whiskey you think I should review in the future. But for now, my final thoughts, I gave it away in the opening. It's just a lovely little whiskey. Now, I will say, the price of this one isn't actually all that lovely. So this here, I checked it up online, comes in at €65. Now, I bought this at Whiskey Live Dublin a few months back. I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it. There might have been a sale, there might not have been a sale, but you know, it was Whiskey Live Dublin. I had had a few whiskies at that point. I was probably maybe a little bit impressionable. I'm not sure it's worth €65. Like, yes, it is a single kind of release, special release, just at the Celtic Whiskey Shop. Yes, they picked a very nice little whiskey, very drinkable. It's not overpowering with flavour, but it's really nice and drinkable, really nice and enjoyable. But at the same time, it's not lacking in flavour, so it's not just like a, you know, throw it into a cocktail, mix it away, do whatever you want with it. It is a nice little balanced, middle of the road whiskey, but for €65, you could probably get something that has a bit more character, still in that like 46% range, but just has a bit more weight, has a bit more character. You know, it's maybe got some fun casks in there, but I think €65 is probably too much for this. It is a lovely little whiskey. If you've tried it, you probably agree it is a lovely, enjoyable little whiskey. I just wish it wasn't €65 because I don't think, like, I recommend people buy it at 65. If it was maybe 50, like €49.99, I'd be like, okay, fine, it's a special release exclusive to Celtic Whiskey Shop. You know, that does command a higher price, but I'd say this would be more in the region of like a €40, something like that. That would be probably a fairer price for this. But like I said, I bought it at Whiskey Live Dublin. I can't remember exactly how much I paid for it, but yeah, I have it now. I've definitely been enjoying it. It is a lovely little whiskey, but I just think it's a little bit overpriced for what it is. That said, I'm going to keep on enjoying it, and I'll see you next time. Slán.